I want to welcome back to the studio Brenda Hunt from the Battle Creek Community Foundation. Good morning.
Good morning, Richard.
Thank you for the time today.
My pleasure.
So money, of course, is what it's about, and most recently an announcement that the foundation came into some money that will help seniors and children.
Absolutely. We're very pleased that we are the recipient of a grant in the amount of $226,000 from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund.
What does that fund do?
The Michigan Health Endowment Fund was created on the insurance exchange when Blue Cross Blue Shield moved into a nonprofit exchange provider, and it really focuses on health needs all throughout the whole state. This particular program was made available through the Council of Michigan Foundations back down to community foundations, and the size of the grant available was based on population size in our county. So our $226,000, a majority of that's for Calhoun, but Branch County asked us if they would also we would also operate their piece. So that added some $50,000. In addition to that, though, we're very pleased of our partnerships between Albion, Athens, Marshall, and Homer foundations who've also contributed, along with the Bronson Battle Creek Hospital Community Partners, which some will know is the 49% owner of the hospital here, who has also contributed to make a $218,000 match to that 226. So we're very, very pleased. This will be an opportunity for committees to come together to really focus on grant making and health area for both seniors and children. Those categories were predefined.
All right. So where the rubber meets the road on this then is certain programs that directly assist those stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like it's going to be just two different funds of money. There's several different categories to cover several different needs throughout the county, ranging from the hub, the kitchen hub that they're building in Albion for nutrition access, to transportation between Albion and Marshall, and then to maternal and infant health, as well as the needs for seniors throughout the county.
So when you decide or help figure out where this money goes through the grant-making process, I presume that there's been some kind of list made of where the real needs are.
Yeah, there are certainly needs that are specific to transportation, the Operation Fit program that we're trying to really implement now countywide in the schools for the kids, that's really nutrition focused and really health focused to bring down weight levels, quite frankly, and help and develop healthy habits. And in Albion, they've got a kitchen they're about to open over there. I happen to have an opportunity to tour that, where people can go in and make the food and actually sell it. The farmer's market will be in the back that we've helped fund. So there's several specific items like that. Then there are maternal and health needs. Throughout our county, we have traditionally run some pretty high infant mortality rates. I think you're going to see some very positive announcements just here in the next month or so about that rate coming down. We've actually made some progress in infant mortality in this county, and our good friends at Grace Health and Calhoun County Public Health Department, along with many other collaborators, have been involved in that. But that's also been a focus of community partners, and so there'll be a committee that comes together to review requests for proposals in that area.
What about seniors in that end of this? What are some of the things that are most concerning there?
Right. Well, we continue to have as a long-term goal at the Community Foundation to become the best provider of places for people to age here in this community. And so we're very pleased that CentraCare, that has 170 lives there under their program model in Calhoun County, now has WMed students circulating through there. And so we have some long-term goals as it relates to that. Memory care and some new programs coming around for seniors for planning financially coming up. So there's a number of programs in that area, and that remains one of our major focuses, particularly with our ownership of the Cool Center that provides a whole hub of services for seniors.
That's true. So as you announced this great award, was this a process that you had to jump through some hoops, we imagine?
Oh, yes. It was a pretty rigorous grant review process, along with the collaborative components that we really completed in beginning in August and submitted in September. And so there was a lot of work put together by our good staff and our collaborative partners throughout the county.
Brenda Hunt is here from the Battle Creek Community Foundation. We're back shortly on WBCK 8:15. 16 WBCK. Brenda Hunt is here from the Battle Creek Community Foundation. Some folks might be listening to this salivating, saying, "Oh boy, there's an opportunity to apply for a grant." How soon can they do that?
And we anticipate the money will be here in February,
Okay.
and we'll be up and running right around the 1st of April. Those processes will begin.
Doesn't take long, does it?
No, it
Wow.
does not.
And so those application processes start, and then generally, what kind of a time frame is it before you write somebody a check?
Right. We'll be having some checks go out around May.
Boy, that's fast.
Yeah.
Is that a usual timeline in these kinds of
Yeah,
situations?
we've gotten to take a little bit longer because we run a very high volume of grants at the Community Foundation in our cycles. And this one, we've got to start assembling committees that are special, new collaborative committees.
Right.
And so we're actually going to begin that this month. So there's a lot
Okay.
of prep work already taking place to make sure that by the time we make the announcements, we've got all the details fleshed out.
Okay. Speaking of details, a story that made news fairly recently was the Rink in Battle Creek, and how much of a hub that is for a lot of young people and adults too. And it was almost gone, but the foundation had a hand in trying to pull that together, didn't they?
Yeah, very pleased about the fact that we were able to play a significant role, I believe, with some designated funds, and quite frankly, the bigger role that I think we played is just kind of behind the scenes in straightening out some structures associated with this asset as a community. And I have to give a lot of credit to the BC Vision because it gets us all looking at things differently. And then the second part I have to say is the citizens of this community step forward, many of them through the Greater Battle Creek Ice Hockey Association. What they do to commit to teach kids to skate and to create wonderful opportunities with that asset is pretty remarkable. So we're really pleased to be able to be in there to collaborate with them. We're also pleased that we have a private owner who we were able to work with, and I do think that we've got some next phases for operation. It's just barely being stabilized right now, and so we have some next steps that actually we're meeting on today to get it open more broadly for the community. They are having some open skates, but our investment does require even open access time for some folks who are unable to pay the rate. And then the third part of that, I think, is negotiating some long-term, what's the best ownership model for the rink. And that was all part of what we discussed when we went into it.
Sure. This seems like an unusual kind of arrangement, a community attraction like this, if you will, that has a private owner.
You know, the private sector and the nonprofit sector are getting more close together all the time, and I think that there's some real positive energy generated around that. So I'm not quite sure what model that we will take on moving forward. There's a number of shared ownerships. There's a number where you could have a private owner that subcontracts the operations out. So we'll look at all those different opportunities. But what is for sure is that Rink is a wonderful opportunity for this community, and the community is really earning their way back into that Rink as they say, let us do more, and we're just here saying, let us enable you to do that. And I think that's what we're all about as a community when we talk about vitality.
Does it get tricky when there is a private owner and you're talking about trying to use the influence of the foundation to try and make that happen?
Yes, I'm going to tell you there's nothing about this one that wasn't tricky. Not the least amount was the amount of time by the time it came to our desk about how we got to get a floor in there. And we have several local contractors that have stepped up to assist us along with individuals because there's one thing for this type of flooring to be in. There's a whole bunch of ancillary work that goes in there as well. I think Battle Creek is on one of those trends where it looks at its assets differently and it behaves differently around them. And I think when we let the community be more engaged and we enable and support the community engagement, these are the type of outcomes that we see. We go from almost gone to it's on an upward trend. I mean, I was down there Saturday night. It's so exciting to see after they're done playing and then to watch the kids go out and skate.
Just have a good time. Yeah, if you were to call up and want to just order a repair on a deal like that. What did I read? $2.5 million or something.
Yeah, it's a very expensive operation. But we've also gone back and done some retracing of the history and how it was initially operated in this community.
Sure.
And, you know, because we look at all different components of this, because you have to look at the long-term business operations and potential for sustainability. And there's not one doubt in my mind that we can make this work.
All right.
We're very gracious to the doctor for all that he's done and look forward to working with him on these next phases.
Brenda Hunt is here from the Battle Creek Community Foundation. More in just a minute on WBCK. Here with us today, Brenda Hunt from the Battle Creek Community Foundation for a few more minutes. You know, we've done a fair amount of chatting recently with the Haven and Safe Place, and both of them have issued these urgent messages about giving being down and things of that nature. Are you seeing that too?
No. As a matter of fact, we had a very strong year-end. I saw the preliminary figures yesterday as I was signing strong stacks of donations. So we are actually up on the year-end this year. So we're very appreciative and want to shout out a great thank you to all the donors in this community who are coming through very strong. And I'm less familiar with the Haven situation, but I know that the Highway is organizing some meetings with Safe Place, and I personally and organizationally we feel that the how we manage domestic violence as a community needs to be changed, and that might help with some of the funding long term too, with that big house that we have and that overhead in that model.
Mm-hmm. What needs to be changed?
I think that we need to take a look at what are the most contemporary models for addressing this violence across the country, and then bringing them here and implementing them and being the very best at it. And essentially, we're using a similar model that's been there for a very long time. And, you know, a couple of years ago, we helped out and the 30th anniversary of Safe Place. And I think this is just a continuation of that, where I look for some very strong long-term outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems as though, and Jennifer Fatma was just here saying, you know, we've gotten better at identifying this issue on the law enforcement level, and so it just means they've gotten busier, which maybe is part of that model you're talking about, responding to that when that happens.
Yeah, perhaps as we get such strong cooperation as we're getting from law enforcement, the model needs to change for the long-term sustainability part of that. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to be easy for folks, I don't think, but I am a strong believer that there is a way to do this with the identification and do it very effectively with our community.
Is it fair to say that when we're talking about those kinds of nonprofit entities in the community that help with certain issues like domestic violence or homelessness and that certain sort of thing, that's not typically what the foundation helps to influence?
No, we're pretty broad-based. If you look it over, as a matter of fact, we run grant cycles, and we run 3 a year. We've got 17 proposals just for one of the basic areas in right now. So we do really fund that area. And in 2013, we spent, they netted $60,000, Safe Place did from us, just from the special events. But we actually spent much larger than that in helping raise the platform and offered some assistance at that time for some strategic planning and some fund development as well. So I think this is just a continuation of that. Perhaps we could see some things changing more than they could from a standpoint of what really is happening with domestic violence in this country. And we have some folks around that have some different models that look at, you know, instead of putting them there and placing them there, what's the plan, what's the turnaround, what are some other options so that we're not using one treatment for everyone.
Got it.
And I don't want to minimize what a serious issue this is in our society and in our community, but I just think that what we need to be focusing on is we've got this problem right now, but how can we do it better and what needs to change as a result?
When you hear, just generally speaking, about these kinds of issues and these kinds of arenas, are there ways the foundation can influence an outcome that would help, aside from the traditional grant making? And I mean, is there an influence that the foundation could have in trying to make change there?
Sure, I think so. Somebody said to me, "Do you do emergency funding?" And I said, "Don't use the word emergency," but we've been known to cut some checks very rapidly in situations. There's also some times that you have to wait and let people come to a realization, the professionals who are heading up the organizations, the board of directors who are directing them, come to their realization of where they're really going to take the nonprofit organization. So it's a very interesting set of roles that we play.
Right.
I don't want to underestimate sometimes how we get things wrong, and we're not always right, and that we should never underestimate the amount of influence that we can have in any situation. If you look at the Rink right now, that is about vitality. That's about exercise, fitness, and all of these components. And what we're trying to be real careful about there is that we support the redevelopment of that system, but we don't take away, we only support what's happening with all the community members that are really bringing that back to this community.
Right. I guess there's no shortage of needs that you can evaluate out there.
We're very fortunate because we have many supporters at the Community Foundation, and that's why we're in business. And it's very important to remember that and not forget that.
All right. Well, we appreciate the update as always. We'll stay in touch. Brenda, thank you. Brenda Hunt with the Battle Creek Community Foundation. 8:20.